afternoon all. Welcome to the BIM MEPAUS webinar presentation. My name is Chanel Eading and we have Brendan Upton joining us on the presentation today. Brendan is one of the head technical specialists for MEP and BIM MEPAUS and will be presenting today's session. During the session we will briefly go through the initiative behind BIM MEPAUS, the website, the library of content and also the template. Please note, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we will come back to you personally to discuss and go over that information with you. I will now hand over to Brendan and we can get the presentation started. Thanks, Brendan.
Okay, thanks very much, Chanel, and welcome everybody. So today, here's just a bit of an agenda of what we'll be looking at. So as Chanel mentioned, we'll be doing the a bit of on the initiative. It's got a few slides we'll go briefly through, the website, and then we'll get into the template and the content and have a bit of a live demo. And we'll be able to see what is actually inside of the template. And then I've just got a little bit at the end about our future development, what areas we're looking at to expand, and there's a couple of example example projects at the end. So for those of you who are not aware, just a few points about the initiative. It was launched by the AMCA, the Australian Mechanical Contractors Association, in 2010. It's now recognised as a global leading industry initiative. And it is basically addressing the barriers that that still exist in the building services sector with regards to BIM and specifically with using Revit, which is what we're going to cover in this webinar. It was formed to meet these challenges by providing those practical solutions, and so they've developed a collaborative approach amongst key Australian building services practitioners and peak industry bodies, and we'll have a little bit of a look about how the user groups function with regards to the BIM MEPAUS initiative as well. So they produced this steering committee, so that there's a board that exists to drive the initiative, and it's made up of contractors, consultants, manufacturers, and the user groups as well are formed by a group of those bodies, and so there's someone from pretty much every area of the industry giving a voice to the initiative and driving its development. It's been presented at the Revit Technology Conference as well since 2011, and has had some great engagement there and some great feedback, and we've formed many new developments from sessions that have come out of those conferences as well, which has been good. And so the current issues in delivering BIM, which I'm sure you're all aware of, were recognised as being that list there. I won't read through everything there, but obviously the lack of consistent and specified Revit content specifically for MEP, and the time it takes to build that content, and basically the lack of standardisation across the industry with regards to building services. So that's what the main aims of the initiative are to address, and it's particularly with the Revit template and the content that we as A2K have been involved in helping to produce and to develop. One of the main reasons of the initiative is that first point there, to bridge the gap between the consultants and the contractors, and sort of move the industry in the direction of being able to model and create more constructible models from the get-go. So from the design phase, when the consultants pick up a Revit job and are modelling their designs, being able to use this content that we've been creating to be able to build more constructible models, so that when it comes to the point of going over to the contractors at that stage of the project, once the construction starts to take place, that they're not starting again as is the case, what seems to happen still to this day when the models move hands. A lot of the times it's as I'm sure you're aware, it's kind of a drop that and start it from scratch again. So the aim is to try and streamline that process a bit further to make it make these models be able to be used into the construction phase of the project and further. So and to shift the focus from the content creation back to the design, so that you guys are not wasting all of your time producing and concentrating on building up content and whatnot, and not being able to concentrate on the actual design of a building. So having this sort of standard library that we're being produced to manufacturers' specifications, and having that for you guys to lock into and to be able to not have to spend all of that time yourselves. And improve project coordination, so less waste and less rework, obviously, by building these models that are able to be used through the life of the design and the construction of the project and of the building. So the supply of the 3D models to the manufacturer's standards is basically what we've been working on. So working with the manufacturers to build up the content, and to also provide a standard Revit template. So that's what we're going to be mainly having a look at today. We're going to go in and have a look at what is actually in the template for those of you who are thinking about getting involved, what you can expect to be able to use and receive from the template, what's inside. Okay. Before we jump in there, we just want to show you a quick look at the website. So this slide is showing you that there's two web addresses there. So the first one there is the official AMCA website for BIM MEPAUS, bimmepaus.com.au. This is where you can find the information about the initiative as a whole, and also where you will be able to download the specifications and the workflows and the schedules that have been created by the members of the BIM MEPAUS and by the user groups. So the specifications for modelling and specifying and scheduling pieces of equipment in a building services project, along with other information with regards to the whole initiative as a sense. So the next website there is the official A2K site. So this is the website that we run and maintain. This is www.thinkbimmepaus.com.au, and this is where you can specifically go to get the Revit template and the Revit content that we've been involved in creating for BIM MEPAUS. So this is where when you get get a subscription to BIM MEPAUS and you get your login details, that's the website where you'll go to get all of the Revit content. So let's just have a quick look at that website now. If I just jump into the website here. So this is just a quick look at what the website looks like. I'm sure most of you probably have jumped on and had a look. But basically, you've got if you get your login details, once you've purchased a subscription, you can log in up the top here. And amongst some of the other information that you'll find here, you'll find the main page that you'll probably will visit is the manufacturer's page here. Okay, this is where you can find all of the content that currently exists. So each of these manufacturers, you click in, and you'll be able to see that there's content that you can download, Revit content that you can download either individually, or you can tick all at once and download it in bulk. Okay, so this just gives you a bit of an idea of the manufacturers that are already on board with BIM MEPAUS. So these are the manufacturers that we've specifically made content for, and we've worked with them and got their sign-off basically before we actually release it and make it available on here. And there's more coming pretty much every week. We're uploading new content all the time, and so when you get your subscription, you have access to this and to any new content that gets uploaded within that 12-month period of your subscription. So you can always come back and you'll get notification and updates, and we send them out to say what new content is up there, for each month pretty much. And from time to time when there's big releases, we'll send out a notification. You've also got here a link to where the template is. If I click onto that, you can see that you can download the template file. Okay, so there's a history of the templates there. You can see the dates that it's been released. We're constantly updating and amending the template and adding it to it, coming from the feedback straight from the users, from the user groups. Okay, and so we're constantly updating the template just as we're updating and adding new content families as well. Okay, so you'll get notification when you get your subscription when we update the template and when there's a new release. And also we send out notification of what has been updated. So we have a template outline document that basically outlines and explains everything that's inside of the template, and that obviously gets updated every time we update the template. And with each release we also include pretty much like a one-pager that shows you specifically what has been added and updated in that particular issue and release of the template. So that's the website. So I'll just jump back into the slides here, and we'll move along, and then we can jump into the live demo. So just a couple more slides just to give you a bit of an idea of what's actually in the template, what you can expect to find. So there's a list there on the screen. Again, I won't read through everything there word for word, but you get a bit of an idea of what's involved. Predefined duct and pipe types and conduit and cable trays are coming on board now as well. We're developing the electrical side of things as we speak. So if you're in the electrical area on the line there today, be assured that we are actively engaging with a lot of electrical manufacturers at the moment to build up that side of things and that content as well. So stay tuned for many more updates on that side of things to come. Okay. View and filter templates all predefined in the template, and expanded fitting functionality, that point says there. So we'll show that in a sec when we jump into the template, but basically a bit more functionality and flexibility on a lot of these fittings inside the template here that you just don't get out of the box when you install Revit with the library that you get out of the box. So we'll explain that. So just a couple more slides to demonstrate some of the functionality that is in the template. So the duct and the pipe routing preferences particularly have had a lot of attention of late, and so we've defined a whole bunch of duct and pipe types with very specific routing preferences in there that will match what is being used in the industry today, particularly with the Victolic pipe types, which is what this example on the screen here is. This is an IPS / AGS sort of a hybrid pipe type that we've created that's got the different pipe materials, pipe segments, depending on the size range that's being used at the time. So you can see that we've got 3 different size ranges with 3 different pipe segments being used, and then the different fittings that are being used specific to those size ranges. So you can be drawing with that same pipe type, but depending on what size you're drawing with, it'll substitute in these different elbows and transitions and etc. But we'll draw it seamlessly with one pipe type. Okay, another example of some of the functionality that we've added in is the duct installation and lining. So we've got a whole bunch of predefined filters working inside of the template, and they're working off certain parameters that we've added into the duct installation for BCA rating and installation code, etc. So you can see a bit of an example there of how those filters are working. The rules are based on those BCA ratings and installation code values in those parameters there. So we'll have a bit of a look at that as well. Another recent addition to the template has been an example here of these step-down frames for ductwork. So when you're going from lined or insulated ductwork to uninsulated, the way that it is at the moment with the software, the functionality of it with the installation at the moment doesn't allow you to define these stepped-in or recessed frames, is what you would necessarily be expecting to see. Okay. So in conjunction with some of the users that have involved in the BIM MEPAUS user groups, we've developed these step-down frames that allow you to add and keep the airway size the same basically, but represent graphically on the screen in the documentation that there is actually a step down there. So this has been a result of, as I said, the functionality of the software not being able to do it to date. So without Autodesk updating the way the installation tool works, this is a solution for that. Okay, so we actually have some further development with these fittings as well. So expect to see some other updates of these fittings in the not too distant future. All right. So I'll just jump into a live demo now and actually show some of the functionality of the template. So I'm just going to jump across into Revit here, where I've got the template open. Okay. So this is the template here. I'm in Revit 2014 here. Okay. It can be noted though that the template can be seamlessly upgraded to 2015 with no problems, particularly with regards to the lookup tables that run the pipe fittings inside of the template as well. As I'm sure you guys are aware, from 2014 onwards, Revit embeds those lookup tables into the fittings themselves now, which we have done with these template fittings, so that when you update the template, you don't from 2014 to 2015, you don't have any dramas with missing lookup tables or the like. It should just update quite seamlessly. Okay, but as I said, this is 2014 that we've got open here at the moment. Okay, so this is the front screen that you'll get when you open up the template. There's a bit of a title sheet there with a few examples of all the ducts and pipe types in there, and starting to show some of the conduits and cable trays as well. Okay. All right. So if I jump into a 3D view here, just to show you get a bit of a better idea of what's in here. Okay. So if we just sort of breeze over here quickly, I zoom across, you can see the large range of duct and pipe fittings in there, and you can see these are the step-down frame examples there as well. Start to see some conduit and cable trays coming in as well, tight and loose radius cable trays as well. So we're developing those as we speak. These are the Victolic pipe types here, and some of the more standard pipe types that are used. Okay. All right, so if I come back into a floor plan view here, you can see that we've got a bit of a consistency now coming through with regards to the detail levels when you show in a view. If I change that to coarse, okay, you can see that we've got a bit of a standard way of showing the content. And if I go to medium, we start to see double lines for the ductwork, but no flanges. Still single lines for the pipe work, and then once we go to fine, we start to see things like the flanges coming through in the content, and obviously the pipes shown at the double lines. Okay, and you can see the Victolics pipe types there with the couplings being shown there. Okay, I'm just going to jump back to that 3D view just to best be able to represent some of this stuff that we're going to go through here. Okay, so we've got control here in a lot of these fittings for the connection types that are being used. Okay, so this is something that we've added into these fittings, and you just don't get with the out-of-the-box fittings. Okay, if I take this round ductwork T, for example, if I scroll down into the properties here on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see I've got these connection type parameters. Okay, so connection type 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so I can change those, and I can change it from between 1 and 3, and I'll just change each one to be a different setting there, and I click apply. You can see that I now have 3 different, on the one fitting here, I've got 3 independent connection types, independent of each other. Okay, so I've got a flange connection on one joint here. I've got the slip joint where you can actually see the overhang there, and then I've just got the standard sort of butt joint here, flushed to each other. So that's the sort of, with regards to connections for both ducts and pipes, that's the sort of functionality that you can expect to see with these fittings in the template. Okay. We've also got things like length override controls for the applicable fittings. So an example of that would be if I was to grab one of these transitions here as well. I'll just give myself a bit of more room there. If I grab this transition piece here, this is applicable to excuse me, pretty much all of these transitions. But you can see down here in the parameters here, I've got this length override parameter here. Okay, so if I was to change that to say a meter, you can see that it'll adjust the fitting accordingly and override the length. Okay, and another functionality there that you don't get with the out of the box fittings. Okay. With regards to things like these shoes as well, again with the flange, we can turn the flange on and off. Okay, from the controls in the properties. Okay, so I can turn these fittings into either flange joint or not flange joint. Okay. The turning vanes and things like that work as well with a visibility parameter, so we can turn the turning vanes on and off, and so we've applied that to the applicable fittings. So I can turn those turning vanes on and off, and that's applicable in obviously a 3D view, and also probably more importantly in your floor plan views for the actual documentation, where you'd probably want to be seeing those turning vanes. Okay, so but just be assured that, or just be aware that they are visible in the 3D view there as well. If I shoot across here to some of these segmented bends as an example, okay. I've also got a throat radius override parameter on a lot of these radius elbow fittings. Okay, so got those. Not only do have those overrides, but for these segmented bends, we've also got a segment override here as well. So we could change the number of the segments there to update how many segments we actually want in the bend. So there'll be a default value, but if we want to actually add in a specific number, then you can add that override in. And that goes for these other radiuses as well. Obviously you can see that we've got the radius override parameters there as well. So you can have control of the radius bends and actually override them should you wish. Okay. The other thing to note with the content here as well is the way that we've consistently named. We use a convention with the way that we're naming all of these parameters with a lot of these fittings. So if I just, as an example, just choose one of these elbow fittings. If I just have a look down through the parameter list, we can see the naming convention holds a similar convention to all of the fittings. So you can see this numbering sort of system. So when there's more than one parameter or more than one similar parameter, we're using a number system. So duct width 1, 2, extension 1, 2, flange 1, 2. So that you'll notice that across the board or through all these parameters that there is that consistent sort of naming convention. And it might seem like a small thing, but as I'm sure you're aware, when you've got multiple people working on building Revit content and building your template files, people can name things differently, and all of a sudden you've got a whole lot of inconsistencies, and things can end up, all over the place. And so it's really important to try and get these naming conventions consistent so that it is quite easy to use. And one of the reasons why that's obviously really important is because if someone's working on a project and you're working away, and if new users come on board, a few months into the life of the project, if they're not aware of how it's been built and aware of the parameter naming, then they can get quite confused. But if there's a consistent naming across all families and all fittings and all components within the template, then it's just going to be easier and more productive for everyone, really. At the end of the day, it's going to save time from people running around asking questions, how is that working, what does that mean? If there's a consistent naming, then straight away they can jump from one project to another and say, okay, yep, this is working the same way, away I go, I can do it without sort of thinking. So it's one of the things to keep in mind. And that sort of naming convention that we use, not just with families and with the parameters, but that follows through with all of the the piping systems, the duct systems, the electrical side as well. We've taken that feedback on board from users to see, okay, what is the best naming convention, and so we've taken input from the industry to get to the point of where it is. Okay, so okay, the other thing to have a quick look at through here as well is come up to my settings here and my view settings, and I can jump into my view templates. Okay, so you can see an example here of the current BMA standard view templates that are saved in the template that you can use across different projects. Okay, we're developing this all the time, and so there probably will be more to come, and you'll see more of these in the future issues of and future releases of the template. But there's just an example of what we've got in there. And you can see that we're catering to each discipline, so it's not just a mechanical tool. This template will emphasise, and I'll probably say it again before the end of this webinar, but it's it is meant to be an all services, all disciplines tool. It's not just a mechanical tool. This is for all building services. It's for all of MEP. Okay, so we are building up resources and tools in there for all disciplines, and we are constantly seeking input from other disciplines as well to help build up the other side of things, electrical, hydraulic, etc. So just keep that in mind. Okay. If I jump into my floor plan here, okay, and I go to filters, so you can see some of the filters that are in there. If I just edit those as well, you can see that there's these view filters are being set up in here for BMA as well. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of standard view filters. Okay, they work in conjunction with the template as well. So so they're there. So as I said, they're probably going to increase as well. We're currently working on those with input from the user groups as well to better refine those and how they're working with the things like the pipe systems and duct systems and the cable trays and things like that. So so we're continually refining those. But the thing is that you can start to use it, and users can grab this and run with it and basically use it as a bit of a standard, so that they don't have to spend the time and set this stuff up at the start of a project, themselves. Okay. All right. Some of the other things I wanted to show you all was okay. For example, with the routing preferences, let's have a look at how that Victolic routing preference is set up that I mentioned in the slides earlier. Okay, so we've got the this pipe type here, this IPS AGS range. Okay, so if I just select that pipe and I'll edit the type and go into the routing preferences here. Okay, so you can see there's quite a bit going on there. It's what you more than what you would expect to see, I guess, in some of the other standard pipe types and duct types. Okay, so we've added multiple pipe segments and fittings in here to match those different size ranges. So basically, we've got the standard pipe types and materials set up with the sizes and the size catalogs set up. Okay, for copper, for carbon steel, schedule 40, and then standard weight. And as we go up through the different size ranges, it's going to use those different pipe types and those different fittings to suit. So from a diameter of 6 to 50, it's using the copper. From 65 to 250, it's using the carbon steel schedule 40, and then from 300 to 1500 and up, it's using the standard weight. Okay, and so you can see if you run down through the list here that those fittings correspond with those three size ranges. Okay, so for the 60 to 50, it's using the press fit elbow for elbows, and then as you go up, it's using the IPS elbow and the AGS elbow that's come from Victolic. Okay, and we've worked with Victolic to develop these. So Victolic have been one of the more in terms of creating content and development, they've been one of the more active manufacturers out there, and they have actually produced a lot of their own content, which we've actually worked with them to produce. the specific Victolic content that we've included here inside of the BIM MEPAUS template has been modified to suit the Australian conditions and this region. So we've helped to and worked with them, and some of the users of the in the user groups of the BIM MEPAUS initiative have worked with Victolic to update those and to make them more applicable to this region. And so they're the ones that we've actually included into the template. So we have actually worked with them to develop them a bit further. Okay, so you can see as we move our way down, you've got your different transitions and your units, etc., to fit those different size ranges. Okay, so if we go back to, say, one of the ducts, for example, and edit those routing preferences. The routing preferences are all set up, but as I mentioned, some of them are with more detail in there, so that they actually can be used seamlessly instead of having to go through instead of a modeler having to pick one pipe type or duct type, model away, and then in the same run they want the same type but with a different material because they're upping the size, so they can actually do it in the one run. Okay. So if I select the pipe types here, the duct types here, sorry, you can see just from the type select here, you can see that the ranges of ducts that are actually exist in there, all named as BMA with a prefix of BMA. Okay, so you can see that they're the customized ones that we've created. So for rectangular, round, and oval. Okay, if I select a section of the pipe work and do the same, we can see the pipe types that are available in there as well. Okay, so we've got all of the ones you would expect to see for carbon steel, cast iron, copper, also the plastic pipe types as well, PVC and HDPE, etc. And then you can see down the bottom here the Victolic pipe types that are included into the template as well. Okay. I'll just select a section of cable tray there, and so you can see what we've got so far with the cable tray. As I mentioned, this is a work in progress. We are getting feedback to develop further flexibility and further types with the cable tray, but this is what we've got so far. We are also working occasionally with some manufacturers of specific cable tray as well, which we've looked at to try and include into the future. So you should start to see some developments with those electrical side of things as well. If I select the conduit as well, you can see we've got a few conduit types there set up for loose, medium, and tight radius bends. Okay, so they're set there already, so that you can start to model knowing that you're using that these bends are being forced into a particular radius. So that if you try and do a smaller radius, then it won't let you. There's rules in those families of those fittings to stop them from being less than that radius. We do also have, similar to the other elements here with the conduits, we do have to some degree some radius override parameters in there, but generally these conduits are being controlled by the formulas within the family and also lookup tables as well, which you may be familiar with if you're working with pipes and pipe types and conduits where these lookup tables in Revit are utilised. So yeah, those conduits are being controlled by generally by those lookup tables. Okay. All right. Okay. So an example of those, just to show you quickly as well, an example of those lookup tables as well. If I just edit one of these elbows here, okay. In case you're not aware, as I mentioned, with Revit 2014, those lookup tables are actually embedded into the family. Okay, so you can see that there's actually a lookup table here, a Victolic lookup table that's being used in these families, and you can see these formulas that reference that lookup table. Okay, the lookup table itself is still an external file. It is still a CSV file. Okay, like it was previously. However, you notice that in 2014 now you've got this lookup table button here where you can actually embed that CSV file in with the family, so that whenever that family goes, it's anywhere, when you send it to someone else or it goes from one machine to the other, that lookup table will come with it, and you won't get those errors like you might have experienced prior to 2014 where it says a lookup table is missing. Okay, so you can see that these lookup tables are embedded into the into this family. The reason why there's two here in this example is a lot of these Victolic pipe types or Victolic elbows and transitions, they're actually using a lookup table for the they're using a lookup table for the bend itself, so for certain properties in the family, like this radius and the diameter, etc. But there's also nested into those families is the coupling family as well, which is unique, which is part of the makeup of these Victolic elbows. So the coupling family that's nested in also uses a lookup table there as well for its sizing too. So that's why you're seeing two there. Okay. All right, I'll close that down and go back into the template here. Okay, go back to a 3D view here for a sec. Okay, so you get a bit of an idea of what these Victolic pipe types look like. So with the couplings on there as well. So they're quite detailed, they're quite efficient families in terms of file size, which is something we try and achieve with all of the content that we build for BIM MEPAUS. But you can see that at the same time they're still quite detailed and they actually look quite good. So in some of the examples that I'm going to show you at the end of this presentation, you can start to see some of these the details coming through in some rendered images and things like that, with the couplings and the pipe types looking quite neat. Okay, you can see the flanges and things like that, how these pipe types are set up. Okay, the reason why you might be wondering where are these colors coming from? Okay, I'll just show you where those colors are coming from. They are we've added those into the system types in the family. So these example set runs that I've drawn here, I've actually specified them to be a particular different systems. Okay, so those colors are applied to the override of those systems. So they're set inside of, for example, your pipe systems here. Okay. Okay, if I open up one of those pipe systems and I go into the graphic overrides here and edit that, you can see that there's a color specified there as well. Okay, there's also a material defined here as well. So we've actually added the materials as graphics in there as well, so that they can be used during for coloring in 3D views, etc. as well. And we've actually defined a whole bunch of those for pipes and for ducts as well. Okay, so we've got all those in there as well. So that's where those colors are coming from. Okay, and I'll quickly show you an example of I mentioned the duct insulation earlier as well. Okay, so here's an example of the ducts being hatched depending on their insulation types. Okay, so this one, which is 25mm external insulation. Okay, firstly I'll show you where so there's a filter in this view. If I go into my visibility graphics here, it's a standard BMA filter for the insulation, so you can see for the external lining there as well. That's where the crosshatch is coming from. If I edit that one, you can see the rules are depend on those parameters that I mentioned earlier, the insulation code, what it is values is set at, and also the BCA rating. Okay, so I'll show you where those parameters are. So if I click on that piece of ductwork and I edit the insulation, you can see this is where we've added these parameters into our duct types here, so into the insulation types, I should say. So we've got the BC rating and the insulation code. So there's standard terms that we've used coming from the industry, what's used and recognised, and depending on what is used for those RT values or the insulation code will govern what hatching you get there. And all of this is outlined in the template outline document. Okay, so the template outline document has this all explained, and there is a section in there for duct insulation, and it explains what the different codes are, and it also explains how to get the hatching working, how to apply the filters if they're not already applied. Okay, you can see we've got the different flex duct types defined there as well. The other thing that we've started to add, okay, and this is a work in progress as well, but we've started to add some standard tags inside the template for annotation for documentation purposes, so that we can start getting a bit of standardization there as well. Now, we understand that there'll be some companies that use, differing types of tags and things like that. I guess the same could be said for, for the hatching as well, for installation. Some companies will use different types of hatching and whatnot. We understand that, but what we're trying to do is add this into as an example of a standard that could be adopted. And even if it's a case of we understand that some companies may take on these filters or take on these tags, and they may alter them somewhat, but at least there's something there to start from. Okay, so we'll be adding some more tag types into the template in the not too distant future. We've had some feedback already onto what we're actually displaying there and how they're being displayed. So we'll be looking to develop that a bit further as well. Okay, I think that's probably as much as I was going to show you in the template here. What I might do now is I might just jump back into the slides and just give you a bit of a idea of what we're looking at, the specific things that we're looking to develop into the future, and what you can expect to see in the future issues over the next few months, what we're currently working on. And as I mentioned, these things we're working on have come directly from feedback that we get from people using the template. We gather all that feedback, and we get quite a lot, which is great. We gather it, and we then prioritize it. We work back and go back to the user groups and say, okay, this is what we're thinking of working on. What would be the most what should we prioritize? What should we do first? What can be left a little bit later? And then we sort of organize that, because we can't obviously answer everything in the one update. So we prioritize it, we work on the things that we can realistically get to, and then we release it, and we keep going. And so that feedback, it's just a cycle. It'll just keep coming through, and we just keep adding to it in the order that we think is fit for the purpose. So I'll jump back into the slides show here, and let's jump to there. Okay. All right. Just take you through just a couple of slides with regards to what you can expect from the actual content itself, from the families that you can download from the website. Okay, so be sure that all of the content that we build for BIM MEPAUS is built to our standards and built to a particular standard. We have an affiliation with ANZRS, so we are using a lot of the standards and the best practices that are described in the ANZRS documents. Okay, so we do use those, but we understand that some of the BIM MEPAUS, and we know that it's a work in progress, but we understand that some of the BIM MEPAUS, some of the ANZRS side of things in there and standards are not as developed fully for the MEP side of things. So we've added our own sort of standards in terms of building specifically MEP content. Okay. And we've also, for all the content that we've created, we actually engage with the manufacturers themselves for which we are building for and what components we're building. So we work closely with them, and we get we get from them what data should be in the family, what should be there in terms of how it's built, what should be included. We obviously, they don't advise us how to build the Revit content. We're obviously the experts in building the actual geometry and making the families function correctly and in the best way, but we get all of the engineering data, and we get their specification tables and manuals and whatnot. We actually include that in the families to make sure that they can actually be scheduled properly. And so when we work with the manufacturers, we will build the content, we'll go back to them, we'll demo it for them, we'll get some further input from them. We may need to make a few more alterations. We then go back again and get a sign-off from them, and they say they're happy with it. It's at that point that we release it onto the website and make it available to all the subscribers. Okay. So this is just an example, again, coming from the website which we looked at earlier, so we don't need to dwell on this for too long, but just an example of the manufacturers that are currently on board. You can see the depth that's already there, and as I mentioned, we're adding to this all the time. We're engaging with more manufacturers every month, and building more content. And even for these ones that are on already, there's more to be built and more can be included. And we're actively working with those manufacturers to bring on more of their ranges and different models and things to make them available in Revit, the applicable ones that are needed. Okay. And again, we get that demand from the industry as well, from the users. We get a lot of feedback. We don't just get feedback for the Revit template itself, but we also get a lot of feedback from users saying, okay, oh, that was great that we've got this CELMAC, VOV boxes here, but we really would like to see this range available, or we want to see these valves available from Viega, or these pipe types available from Viega and whatnot. So we'll then go back to manufacturers and then work with them to try and develop those. Okay. And so again, worth noting that obviously you can probably notice that there's a fair bit of mechanical content there on this screen. Okay, we are, as I said, actively engaging with the other disciplines and other manufacturers for other disciplines, equipment and whatnot, and actively trying to build up those side of things as well. So if you guys have got any feedback for what you'd like to see on BIM MEPAUS, certainly bring that information through to us, get back to us. That's all the information that we can use and try and build up these other disciplines. Okay, so that's beneficial for all of us. So just an example of some of the functionality you can expect to get with a lot of the families, okay, that we're creating. Here's an example of what we've added in, which is, again, you don't get out of the box, with the content libraries. Things like the clearance zones around these around applicable equipment. Okay, so for plant room equipment or equipment that needs access zones, service or serviceable zones, clear around where it's installed. We're adding these clearance zones in and nesting them into the family so that they can be. There's a few things. Okay, so they in a floor plan type view. These can be switched on and off, so you'll see the red dashed outline box, so they can actually be documented if you need to document this stuff on a layout sheet. And also in a 3D sense, these clearance zones that an example of which you can see on the screen here, they are basically extrusions, okay, with a bit of a transparent appearance applied to them. But they are actually a solid object, so they can actually, that means they can be clashed against. Okay, so if these models are being used inside of for example, a Navisworks model, you can clash against these clearance zones. So you can see straight away if there's not only a clash with the equipment itself, but if there's a clash with elements, external elements coming into the clear zones of these equipments, and you can say, right, well, there's pipe work too low here, or there's a bit of ductwork coming in and clashing in where what should be clear here, or the head height's not right for the clearance zone that's needed for this piece of equipment. Okay, so that's can be quite useful, and these can be turned on and off. Okay, so there's a option in all of these families that have these clearance zones to turn them on and off, so they don't have to be on in any particular view. But just keep in mind, if they are off, they won't get exported into something like Navisworks. They do need to be on from the view that they're exported from, etc. Okay. All right. So here's an example of it's a quick example of how the user groups function. Okay, with BIM MEPAUS. Okay, so we've basically now set up a user group in many of the states now. So there's one in New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, and Queensland. Okay, so what happens is, and these generally at the moment they kind of happen every couple of months. It's hard sometimes for the different states to get together, regularly, but we try and get them together as regularly as possible. The Sydney one's been quite active, and as have they all been. But yeah, the Sydney one's been quite active of late, and is trying to get together quite regularly. But if you are interested in becoming involved, just get in contact with us and we can let you know where and when these meetings take place and who's involved, so that if you want to come and give some feedback, you're more than welcome. The more the merrier. It's going to be beneficial for all of us. We want it to work as much as you guys want it to work out in the industry, so we rely on this feedback quite a lot, and it helps us to drive what we're going to actually update. So the feedback, so those user groups meet. So that, I guess the beginning of the slide there is the BIM MEPAUS. That's representing, I guess, the board. They set the agenda and standards of what's going to be involved. That then goes to the user groups, and they review that stuff. They're also obviously reviewing the Revit side of things as well. So a big part of the user groups is reviewing the Revit template and the content which we've just been looking at. They then bring that feedback back to a single person or a chairperson of each of those groups, who then feeds that feedback through to us. and it goes back through BIM MEPAUS and then back through to us at the end, us being A2K. We then actively, as I said, prioritise and work with the user group to say what we're going to develop from that feedback, what is the most that's needed, etc. And we then work through those updates. We then release a new version of the template, and then that cycle will pretty much go through again. Okay. Now, having explained that, okay, it's worth mentioning that this is not the only way that feedback can come through. Okay, so if you don't have the time or resource to attend the user groups, obviously, a lot of you are obviously quite busy. We understand that. There are other ways that you can give feedback. Obviously, you can just shoot us an email through. There's actually on the website there is actually an area there where you can actually give us some feedback here. So the development requests tab here on the website. Okay, you can shoot us through an email and who you are and basically some details of what you're needing or what's missing or what you think should be included. So update, and we'll get that, and basically we'll add that to our and collate that in our feedback databases and spreadsheets that we've got going on in the background. Okay, so that's another way that you can get in contact with us, or just give us a call. Give us the 1-800 number a call. Call A2K, and you can talk to someone if need be. Okay, so the areas for further development, obviously, I'll emphasise this again, increase the resources for all the MEP disciplines, okay? So it's not just a tool for the mechanical contractors. Okay? Although it was started from AMCA, it's not just for mechanical side of things. They recognise that this is a whole of construction, whole of industry approach, and it's for all building services. So just keep that in mind, okay, that we are actively trying to develop this equally for all disciplines and have it a tool for all of building services. So the current focus is improve also the better engage and with design consultants to implement the template. Okay, so we've had a fair bit of input from the contracting side of things and the contractors. We're now getting some good input from the consultant sides, and we want to develop that further so that we get even more tools in there that are applicable to those of you that are sort of starting up from the design side of things and the start of a Revit project. You may be on the consultant side of things, and you maybe don't need all of this as detail as such, but how you can use these families with the detail there in the background, but use them to your advantage in the first initial concept and design phases of a project. We're working through a standardised system names and colours as well. We're sort of redefining that and refining it from what's there already. There's a good system already in place in BIM MEPAUS, but we're further refining that as well at the moment as well. Okay, so this next slide, this first point there is a big item, okay? So as we speak, we are actually actively working on a BIM MEPAUS shared parameter file. That should be coming out, very soon. You should see some development on that very shortly. It's been something that's been needed for quite a while. We've had a lot of requests. The BIM MEPAUS shared parameter file is going to be able to allow for even more detailed scheduling, obviously, and functionality of the families, okay, to include that data in there. So as I said, that we are actually working on that as we speak, okay. So that's in development or under development as of now, okay. So that should be coming out very shortly. So there's a couple of points there. It's a single reference to be used with the template and the content. The last point there to note is and if you're at the BIM MEPAUS forum recently down in Melbourne, we sort of mentioned this and went through the process of creating these IFM, industry foundation models, or another way of saying it is basically they're just generic families. Okay, so we're building a bunch of generic families for all of the typical and current or most popular equipment that's used in a typical project. Okay, we're building these generic families so that they can take on board these newly created parameters that we're going to create, so that they can be scheduled and specified in a schedule in a project from the beginning, we will be able to utilize those for the beginning of a project that they can then be easily swapped out to be construction families or the manufacturer-specific families. All right. So these last few slides, just wrapping up. We just got a couple of examples here of some projects and some users that have used the content. Okay, so here's some examples of some plant rooms, and you can see the pipe types being used there, particularly the Victolic type pipe types with the couplings, etc. Okay, so you can see some examples here of some of the pump sets. Okay, and here's an example of a project that is basically all in Revit and it's fully constructible. So all of these these duct segments and pipe segments for that matter, but these duct segments are constructible. They're built to size, and it can be taken off and built from this model pretty much. And you can see the documentation as well, with terms of tagging and turning vanes, things like that, insulation indicators, all in there, all ready to go. All right, that's it from me. I think we've taken up the full hour there, so thank you very much for your attention and for taking the time to have a look at this webinar. We appreciate you taking the time. So we look forward to working with you. Yeah, just get in contact with us, and I'm sure Chanel will be in contact with you after this. And as she mentioned, if you did have any specific questions, hopefully you've been able to type them in to the webinar chat area there, and we'll get back to you definitely. If you didn't have a chance to type the questions in, by all means give us a call or come back to us at shoot us an email, and we'll come back to you and be able to answer those questions. But thanks for now, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Thank you to you all for joining in the webinar presentation this afternoon. And yes, we have got some questions through, so Brendan and I will be in touch with you to go through that information if those questions haven't already been answered. I look forward to catching up with you guys over the next couple of weeks. Have a good afternoon.